Hey, so while I wait for the final mix back from the sound team, I've been going through and updating some final shots, and this is the one of the ones I poked at last night. Maybe added a little bit too much moss, but it's been nice kind of just doing that final pass. I added all these little drips and the flying machine from earlier and made the ground a little bit wetter and just gave the whole thing a final polish. But the thing I'm most excited about is I added this little sign here to the brick, and this is an older part of the waterworks facility. The rest of it's like a waterworks processing plant that was turned into a market, and this is just an old part of it that was just the original waterworks. And so I wanted to reflect that in some of the signage. And it just worked out really well, and it was pretty easy. So I thought maybe today we'll talk about some brick stuff. Also, calling back to the video I did a couple weeks ago of different 14 minutes of ways to select stuff, which will be very useful when we're making bricks. So here we go. Okay, so first, just to walk us through the process, I'm gonna right-click, subdivide this a few times. These will become the bricks. In fact, let's do it like 20. But I want each brick to be twice as wide as it is tall, which means I need to dissolve a bunch of a weird pattern of these vertical lines here. And to do that, I can just select one of these and hit Shift G, select similar direction. And now I just have to deselect every other one of these, and ideally that'll be the right pattern. If I go to select, checker deselect, it'll only do the row that has the active edge in it. But if I shift click down here, or I guess alt shift click down here, that will connect all of these edges, so they're all the same, they're all part of the same selection. So I can go select, checker deselect, and that'll give me just every other one on that vertical row. So I can hit Control X. Whoa! Oh, interesting. Well, that's not a pattern I expected. Here, let's just try that again. Here, I'm gonna select just that one. Select, checker deselect, and that looks more like the pattern I was expecting. All right, Control X, and there's our brick pattern here. I'm gonna select all of these and hit I twice to select each individual face and extrude it out, and we have some bricks here. In fact, I'm going to hit Control I to select invert the selection, and H to hide everything except for these brick fronts here. Turn on proportional editing, and that means now I can kind of just pull all of this around. I'm going to change this to random. Now if I go out here, I can kind of rotate. It'll just randomly within the bounds, rotate these different vertices. So I can pull a little that way, a little bit that way, and if I do this just a few times, especially like up and down too, we're gonna add a lot of just randomness to this brick surface here. And now Alt H to bring back all that other stuff, and we have a nice bouncy brick wall. Here, let's add a bevel on here, and yeah, all right. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward, but if we combine it with an image texture, we will have even more realism. So let's hop into that. I'm gonna hit Shift A, images as planes. I've got a brick wall here, so let's import that. And the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna rotate it so it's facing us along the y-axis here. And under the material properties, I'm just going to uncheck Show Backface, and that's one of the things that just is really useful to do whenever you use images as planes. I don't know why that's checked by default, honestly. But okay, now we just have to line this up with our plane. We want all of this to be nice and square. So I'm going to use Control R to add an edge loop here, and let's see. I really want this to be along the center of this white bit. Yeah. And so down here we'll line this up too. And you can see the brick wall isn't perfect, and so hopefully that's forgiving enough. I'm gonna add another one over here. Another edge loop here, just trying to line it up again with the middle of all of this. Another one down here. Cool. And I'll delete everything except for the center bit. Instead of shift clicking all of these, I'm just going to select this one and hit Control I X, delete all of that. You can use Control R to add an edge loop and just scroll up until they all line up with the number of actual rows. That's looking pretty good to me. And if I wanted, I could go in here, select individual ones, and double tap G to clean it up. But I might do that for some of the ones that are a bit off. Honestly, if I'd done a smaller section, it probably would have been easier to get everything to line up. But this is okay. And this is a lot of times you don't actually get a pattern this perfect. Because when they build brick walls, they usually have a row where instead of being laid lengthwise, they go depthwise, because a lot of brick walls are actually 2 brick walls stuck together, and so they'll have, like, every 5 rows, a row that's just bricks connecting the 2 walls to keep things nice and strong. But this works great in this example. So doing the same thing here until this all lines up. And if, again, I need a tighter crop or a more perpendicular picture of bricks, this would all line up probably perfectly, but instead I'm going to go in and just double tap G to slide some of these around so they're just a little more lined up. The thing about brick walls is I think brick walls was the first time I realized back in like the late 90s or like 2000 or something that like, oh, I can just put a picture of a brick wall on a surface and suddenly it looks like a brick wall, and I got very, very excited about that. And then realizing if you added like a bump map to the whole thing so it actually looked like the bricks had texture, that was the most exciting thing to me. Okay, so we're gonna do the exact same thing we did, but now with this one. So select one of these vertical edges, Shift G. Want to make sure you're in edge selection mode, otherwise it'll be like selecting, it'll give you face selection options instead. So go to edges, select a vertical one, Shift G by direction, okay. And it also gives you a threshold down here just in case you need it, so you can select things that maybe aren't perfectly vertical. And I'm going to Alt Shift click on this base so they're all connected. And let's see what happens if we go check or deselect. Is that doing it? It looks like it is. So we want, wait a second, no, it's got a weird pattern, and I'm not sure why. I'm gonna try making the active edge this one right here. It's probably doing something smart, but I'm not sure what it is. But now this looks as if it's, yeah, the active edge, or the selected edge is in the middle of all the bricks. So I can just hit Control X, delete all of those. And future Ian popping in with a quick note. Thank you, Dewey, for pointing this out. If you do the check or deselect and it doesn't select the right ones, you can open this menu here and just offset it, and that'll just invert the selection. And that looks pretty good. All right, select everything. Double tap I, or triple tap I. So I've got my mortar going, and I'm gonna actually inset it a little bit more instead of extruding, and pull that out just so that there's a little bit, the texture data isn't 100% stretched. Cool. Now Control I, hide that. We're going to do the exact same thing with the proportional editing up here. Whoa. My scroll wheel has dust in it or something. I tried to clean it and suddenly my entire computer just went poof, just shut down. I'm like, so now I'm worried to mess with it. But that means every time I scroll in, it'll like scroll back out, and it's, I don't know, I gotta figure it out because it's driving me a little crazy. But yeah, here, let's add our little bit of randomness here. A little to the left, a little to the right. That's too much. And it's definitely playing around on this axis too. Okay. And yeah, that's looking okay. Let's put our bevel modifier on there. And if we wanted, we could just select everything and scale it on that axis so that it all gets a little bit flatter again, because like this actual brick wall the texture's from probably wasn't this bumpy. And so it's cool to have it bumpy, but you will probably also get more realism if we keep it a little more flush. Okay, so now texturing. First thing, obviously, this is too glossy, especially if we get this light in here. That's not particularly realistic. So let's go into the material settings. You can slide this open, go into the node editor, shader editor. And first, I'm just gonna turn down specular, and that just helps a lot. Actually, we could give it a custom specular map, or we can plug the color of this into the specular value. So the darker the areas are, or I guess the brighter, the more specular they are. But I don't even totally like that. Here, let's add a color ramp in there. And let's see. Yeah, we just dial it in a little bit. Now there's some specular areas. I'm going to make the black just a little bit gray, so there's still a little bit of a sheen, and that's looking okay. In here, let's do the same thing. I'm going to drag the color down into the normal down here, and add a bump map in the middle. Plug it into the height, and so now the brick values will be adding a little bit of a bump map too. I think by default the white is the high areas and the dark is the low areas, but since the mortar is the recessed area, I might check invert here. Not that it matters because we've actually modeled in that detail, and also this is too much. So let's put this to like 0.1, just turn the strength way down. I just want a tiny little hint of it. And this is not a high enough res JPEG really to be doing this sort of maneuver. Like, that's some pretty intense pixelation right there, but as long as we're at a distance, it's okay. Okay, so how do we add a sign? Gotta pick a good font. Or I guess let's look at reference. Old sign painted on brick building. See, this is just such a cool thing, such a cool look right here. So we're looking at different patterns and stuff we can see. All of them have some level of aging on them. A lot of them, almost all of them, are inside of a nice clean rectangle, which is something we can do pretty easily. And this kind of a swirly font, I like it. And a lot of them are on a slant or something like this. I like this little section down below. Yeah, a lot of them are kind of in two different sections. This looks really easy to replicate. So let's jump over to a font website, daftfont.com. I don't know. That's the one I've used. I think there's lots of different font websites though. And retro maybe, or script. Let's try old school. That's kind of what we're going for. And I'm going to check more options here and just make sure that I've got 100% free public domain checked. And what's cool is we can actually, look at this. This is what I want to do. New fuel. That sounds like a sci-fi thing, yeah? And that'll let us actually see what that word will look like in all of these different fonts. So which of these looks as if it could be on the side of a building? I want something kind of beefy. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Lobster. Okay, let's download Lobster. Cool, so open that up, install that, and I'm going to open up a new Blender file. And this is just going to be our graphic design Blender file. So from the get-go, I'm going to get rid of perspective here. Just going to change it to orthographic and hit Alt-R to get rid of rotation. So now we just have a perfectly flat view from the top here, and that makes it a little easier for graphic design work a lot of times. We can just change the zoom. And so let's see, we'll delete that. Shift-A, add some text. New fuel. Load in our font. Search for Lobster. Huh, didn't show up. I might need to restart Blender or something for that to show up. But this one looks the same. I mean, it's trying to kind of reference Coca-Cola a little bit, but I still think that for this purpose, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to create an emissive material here. Let's go into rendered mode. That's looking pretty good. I'm gonna duplicate this, and let's see, what should that say? What's a good fuel thing? Modern power for your modern life. Yes, scale that down. Let's pick a new font here. Interesting. I'm actually missing quite a few fonts that I expected to be in here. Sunset Boulevard. Yeah, let's do that. Sure, that looks retro-y. I don't think you could easily hand paint this on the side of a wall, but I think that'll be fine. All right, cool. So now let's just create that border. So mesh plane, stick it right underneath. Doesn't matter how far because perspective doesn't matter when you have an orthogonal camera. New. Let's make it emissive, just like a dark gray here. I'm gonna scale it up, and let's do one of those double, two border things like we were seeing. So I'm gonna duplicate this, bring that down, and actually let's make it all a little too big so we can create a wacky border in there. Delete that, yeah. Cool. So if you select a single point and hit Control-Alt-Shift-B, or no, Control-Shift-B, it will bevel just that single point. Although, look at that, we have to tab out, apply, Control-A, the scale. If you're ever beveling it and it isn't a perfect curve, just apply the scale of the object, and that'll usually fix your problem. So now if we go Control-Shift-B, you can see it's actually doing what we want. And we want all of these to be like that. Actually, no, let's just do the top and the bottom ones. We'll keep these ones square. That's looking pretty good. Gonna select everything and inset a little bit. Inset a little more, and a little more. Yeah, okay. So here, let's name this one. This will be white. This one will be black, just to keep track of what we're doing. Let's give it a white border. So select these and load in our white here. Assign. And here we'll delete the next row in. Shift click on that. X, delete those faces. And here, let's even delete this inner row too. Come on, select. And Alt Shift click on that. That's looking pretty good. Ooh, let's have a drop shadow for this, but it's actually like negative space in the black, and so you just won't be able to. It'll be like a place where they didn't paint it. I think that could be a look that I saw in some of the logos we were looking at. So I'm going to duplicate this, Shift D, and to make it a Boolean, we have to actually give it some depth. So I'm going to go back into the font settings here under geometry. I'm just going to extrude it. Cool. And because I have the bool tool enabled, I can easily create booleans with hotkeys. Actually, that looks cool just like that. But select the thing I want to be the negative boolean, shift click on the target and hit control, negative on the numpad. Okay, and that didn't work at all. I thought it would. Maybe I have to convert this to a mesh, I suppose. F3, convert to mesh. Okay, now shift click on that, control negative. Still, okay, it is working. By which I mean it isn't particularly. Let's try changing the Boolean modifier from exact to fast, and okay, that's weird. I keep having more luck with fast, although you can see it isn't really getting the U there. There's probably some overlap somewhere. But that's okay. Just the person who made the sign, they must have messed up. How embarrassing for them. Okay, we have this. Go to the camera view. I'm going to zoom in. And make sure under the render settings, under film, I'm going to check transparent. And that will let me hit render, and it'll appear with the alpha channel there. So with this up, I can just hit Alt-S. I'm going to save it as a PNG and make sure red, green, blue, and alpha is selected here. Call it whatever you want. New fuel. Cool. And now we go back into our original brick wall file. And so let's add our logo on here. I'm just gonna stick it on at the end after we have the original brick material. So here, let's pull this out, add in a mix shader, and that'll give us a place to plug in a diffuse, and this is going to be what has the sign on it. So because I have the Node Wrangler enabled, I can just hit Control T and it loads in a whole image texture. Node Wrangler comes with Blender, you just have to activate it in the add-ons, in the preferences. Let's load in our logo. New fuel, great. And is it already going to be doing anything? Hey, it is. That's kind of fun. I'm going to use the alpha channel of the logo here as the mix factor for these two. So wherever there's an alpha channel, it will use one of the materials, and wherever there isn't, it'll use the other. And that's working right off the bat. I like it. So right now we can't control where the logo's placed without also controlling the brick texture. You can see it all moves around together, and I want to be able to place the sign individually. So I'm going to create a new UV mat here. You can see this is the original. This will be brick. I'm going to create a new one just for the logo. Okay, now in the UV editor, with this stuff selected, I'm going to slide over to here and make sure the logo is enabled right here. So we're tweaking the UV coordinates of the logo and not the original brick texture. And right now it's not doing anything, and that's because both the logo and the bricks are using the same UV map. So I'm going to hop back over into the shader editor here. Right now it's just using the default UV, which is the first one in the slot. I'm going to delete that and put an input UV map and select the logo. Now we drag that in. Now they're both using, the bricks are using the default UV map, and the logo's using the logo UV map. We can hop back over into the UV editor, We're still in the logo, and I should be able to scale this around, and the bricks stay the same, but the logo moves. SX -1 flips it on the x-axis. Cool, so I'm placing that. Obviously it's tiling, but let's jump back over into the shader editor and just change it from repeat to clip here, and now we only have one. And so this is pretty cool. This is too intense though, so I'm actually going to use the values of the brick to control the mix factor here. So alright, let's see. Right now it's using the alpha channel of this, which is just basically on-off. I'm going to mix in the brick material with a mix node. Color mix RGB, and right now it should be like 50% because yeah, we're just mixing in this white. It's kind of wild. I'm actually going to set this to multiply, I think. Okay, yeah, that's doing something that we want. And I'm going to drag the brick texture from down here into that other node. So now we're going to be mixing in the brick values over itself. That's kind of cool. But let's dial it in with another color ramp node. So this is getting to be a little bit of a mess, but you see what I'm doing. I'm using the alpha values going into the mix shader here, and then I'm just mixing into that alpha channel the brick right there. So if I dial this in, actually, do we want to flip this? We might want to flip this. Yeah. So now the white areas are the last place to get mixed in, and what that means is that it won't appear in the recessions of the brick, which is, I think, pretty cool. And yeah, we're getting a good material here. I don't think I actually want it to be pure black anywhere, so I might tweak this black to just be like gray, and I might tweak the white to be like also a little bit gray. That's looking pretty good. Hey, I like that. That's nice and subtle, isn't it? And let's see, if we go into a rendered mode, we can see it with our lighting, which now looks very intense. I think this bump map is just too much, but I'll keep it just a tiny bit. Specular is maybe too much. I think I just don't have very realistic lighting set up right now. Here, let's load in, change the color of the environment to an environment texture, and open an HDRI. Load in one. I get these from hdrihaven.com. I've talked a lot about HDRIs. I'm not going to go into it right now, but now we can delete this, and there. That's looking a little bit more neutral. And so yeah, that's a fun way to put a logo on a wall. I like this. I mean, you could even use this like if you animated some of these values. You could create not that one. You could create a time-lapse effect, like showing new signs aging and like time going by, and you could probably desaturate the brick wall or do different fun stuff. But yeah, all right. I hope that was kind of fun, and I'll talk to you soon. Oh yeah, and then I went ahead and I tried to make like this quick gas station scene because I thought, oh, maybe that'd be fun, but it wasn't.